Welcome to Flow Brewing. We are back. It's been a year since my last post, and they're not going to be coming as frequently, mainly because this is my hobby. And I think that it is very important to apply the scientific method to what we're doing to make sure that we're getting consistent, progressively better results. And I enjoy doing this, but it's not necessarily what I am dedicating my life to. So, therefore, we'll have the posts when we get around to them. Today, we have a wonderful little farmhouse ale that was brewed back in August 30th of 2014. It was fermented with 670 and 677 farmhouse yeast strains, and the beer finished at about 9 bricks. And then I wrote down that, we ended pre before fermentation, post boil at 9 bricks, and then fermentation ended at 1.006. This one was in the fermenter a long time. I brewed it on August 30th, and we took it out of the fermenter on February the 11th, 2014. So it was in there a long time. About 6 months. So, anyways, we are just now getting around to our tasting, and when it was in the fermenter, it was temperature controlled in my garage. And what we did is we took it out of that fermenter. I actually put it in a keg and primed it with some bottling sugar, and actually added more yeast for bottle conditioning, and put it in a keg, and then bottled it with my Blackman beer gun. So first time I've employed that process, but now now that I've had a couple kids, I'm looking to make bigger batches, about 10 to 15 gallons at a time, making beers that will live well in the bottle so that we can enjoy them over a long period of time. And that'll help tie me over as I'm not able to brew as frequently. And I think that it makes a lot of sense because you get to experience the beers at different points in their life and kind of understand how those beers both age over time and how they develop throughout that process. And you get a really, really unique experience that you're not able to get, say, if you were to buy that beer directly from your local liquor store, or wherever else you can get a nice bottle of beer. So let's jump into this tasting here. We will go ahead and open the bottle. Sorry you can't see this here, but it's got a nice crisp pop on open. And what we'll do here is just go ahead and start pouring her in the glass and observing. And we can see here we've got nice carbonation. The beer is chilled. We only poured about 3/4 of the bottle just to prevent any yeast from settling into the glass, and we want to be able to get lots of aroma. It's got a wonderful spicy aroma. Not dry hopped, but you get a lot of white grape. Get some pepper and coriander from the yeast strain, and seems to have a nice white head. Doesn't have a lot of legs, so that kind of leads me to believe that this is a little bit lower alcohol beer, with not as much residual alcohol to hold the beer on the side of the glass. You can see the head is dissipating quite quickly. and we smell it again, and it's very wine-like, very white grape, champagne, effervescent, lots of aromas coming through. And you can see, for those that haven't done this, I think it's really important to, one, taste a lot of beers and remember the importance of building up your senses. We oftentimes, because we are not required to smell berries, food, and plants that we're foraging for, we've desensitized our noses from being able to pick up on intricate and different aromas, but I believe that that's very trainable if we focus on smelling a lot of our foods and our drinks and paying attention to the differences and the subtleties of those. Beer is a little bit different than wine in the sense that these yeast strains are available all over the world, so you don't quite get the regional pocket flavors from yeast strains only available in that region anymore. And there's been so much work and development with yeast that you can almost have any yeast that you want anywhere in the world. However, I do disagree that there is a very strong regional flavor based on the water that is used in the brewing process. And I understand that there are a lot of water treatments that take place to manipulate how that beer tastes and to try to shoot for a certain flavor profile. However, I think that even with some of those chemical manipulations, short of just bringing in water from an outside source, you're still going to attain regional flavors based on the water availability. And I think that the good brewers embrace beer styles and embrace the resources that they have around them to make unique beers to that region. So now that we've done this, let's get in here and taste it. As it warms, you can smell more of the sweetness, the residual sugars coming off. This was brewed with sterling hops, and it was late hopped. However, I don't get a ton of hop aromas off of it, but that's all right. So let's get in here and taste it. One other point, actually, on smelling. I think if you'll notice when I smell, it's hard to see, but you leave your mouth open, which will help your nose open up and absorb some of those aromas. So, little tip, as you start smelling your drink, your food and drink before consuming. So let's get into the flavors. This is a very light beer. It's a very old beer, and you can start to taste that it is not exceptionally fresh. You can taste there's a bit of a hotness when you drink it, and I don't believe that's due to the alcohol. I believe it's a little like a tint of oxidation. That's probably considered a negative thing stylistically. However, not real concerned about it. I think it's just more interesting that it's there, and that makes sense due to the age of the beer. Lots of bubbles on your tongue. Again, it's got a champagne-like white wine sweetness to it that seems a lot of like a fruity grape flavor. Some of that I attribute to the rye 6-row that we used in the brewing process, and we'll talk about that here in a little bit. Very light, very crisp beer, very Belgian-like, farmhouse style. and then just a slight bitterness towards the end of it to kind of hold up. The malt body is very, very light and crisp, almost a little oxidized and airy. So, anyways, very nice little farmhouse ale. I would say that this has aged to the end of its useful life. So I'll probably drink the rest of these bottles at this point. I've been tasting them incrementally, and I would actually say about 3 months ago, in the middle of this summer, they were really in their prime, and was a very pleasant beer. So that's part of this process that I like to do. I wish that I would have had the bandwidth to take a few more recordings over different periods in time to kind of see how this beer changed over time. However, I think it's more important just to enjoy our drinks with family and friends rather than maybe hoard them just for the sake of talking to the computer. So, anyways, flavor-wise, very light, very dry, very crisp, very spicy, and the malt really kind of takes a back seat to the yeast, where you get a lot of the peppery, coriander, white grape-like kind of flavors out of this beer, and it's very warming. Very good into summer beer, and also very good to spring beer, even though we're here in November. Very enjoyable. So, and as you can see here now, the camera does not do this justice. It has a beautiful golden amber, little bit hazy color, and that color, I would say, is right in line with style, and very, very beautiful beer. The camera does not do it justice. It looks much more subdued and murky on the camera, not near as bright as the bright amber looks in real life. So overall, I think very good beer, very interesting experiment. I think this is the type of beer that you want to brew about August. Let it sit in a fermenter, develop some of those sour, a little bit of bubblegum characters, which I really haven't talked about, but it definitely does have a sourness. Very, very light bubblegum flavors. I would, they're almost not even present, but you can kind of get a little bit of that characteristic out of this yeast. And I think that this is a perfect yeast combination to brew in August. Keep it temp controlled, ferment it through, say, September, October, November, about December time frame, and keg it. Let it bottle condition till about March, and then I think that this beer is the perfect beer that will take you through spring, summer, and into the early fall with lots of enjoyment. So thanks for tuning in and checking us out. I hope that you were able to learn a little bit about the process in which you can invoke to have a successful tasting, as far as observing the pour, observing the aromas early after the initial pour, letting the beer warm a little bit, and then observing the aromas again. Take note of the appearance of the beer, and then after all that, and smelling the beer with your mouth open, so that you are opening your nasal cavity to get as many of the aromas as possible. Only after all that and taking good notes, then actually taste the beer and then start writing down and thinking about what you are tasting. And I do think it's important to remember we kind of live in an age of snobbery where there are cicerones and sommeliers and all these different professional certifications for tasting and serving these products. But the reality is that there is no right or wrong descriptor for what you smell and what you taste. and that the more that you do it, the more um, adjectives you will develop, and the more in tune with the subtleties of the beverage that you will develop. And I think that that can only lead to a more complex enjoyment of what you're consuming. And I think that it's important to be very discerning in what you taste and what you drink, and that quality is much more important than quantity. Uh, I think that drinks like this can spark excellent conversation and provide an excellent medium to share with a friend. And I think that that's what this is really about, depending on where you're at in your life, and that and what what objectives you have. However, I think that this is a very enjoyable way to appreciate the craft and the tradition of brewing, and to understand how we got to where we are today, and why beer is such a wonderful, wonderful drink. So, anyways, thanks for tuning in. I hope the tasting was useful, and uh, I will post the recipe and some of my brewing notes up on flowbrewing.com. You can go check out flowbrewing.com and create your own beer journals with your own tasting notes to help you develop your senses, and to develop your understanding of both the brewing process and the consuming process. So, hope this was enjoyable. Check out flowbrewing.com for more information, and thanks for tuning in. Cheers.